There's a very old idea, going back at least to the Greeks, that beauty can kill you. Not with a knife, not with poison, just by looking at it too long. Thomas Mann wrote a short novel about exactly that. It's called Death in Venice. And it's less a story about a city than a story about what happens when a disciplined, controlled man finally lets himself want something. Our main character is Gustav von Aschenbach, a famous aging writer. Respected, disciplined. The kind of man who has spent his entire adult life turning feeling into form. He doesn't write from inspiration, he writes from willpower. Every sentence is earned through control, through what Mann calls, again and again, a kind of heroic self-mastery. And that word, restraint, is the whole engine of this book. Aschenbach has built a career and a life on holding himself together. So naturally, Mann's next move is to slowly take that away from him. Restless, unable to work, Aschenbach decides, almost on impulse, which is very unlike him, to travel. He ends up in Venice, at a grand hotel on the Lido, surrounded by wealthy European vacationers. And there, among the other guests, he sees a boy, a Polish teenager named Tadzio, traveling with his family. Aschenbach becomes transfixed by him. Not because of anything Tadzio says or does, the boy barely speaks in the entire novel, but because of how he looks. Mann describes him almost like a sculpture, like something out of Greek art come to life. That's important. This isn't a story about a relationship. It's a story about one man's gaze and everything he projects onto a boy who has no idea he's being watched at all. At first, Aschenbach tells himself this is admiration, purely aesthetic, the appreciation of an artist for a perfect form. But slowly, that explanation stops holding up. He starts rearranging his days around glimpses of the boy. He follows him through the streets of Venice. He lies to himself about why he's staying in the city longer than planned. And physically, he starts changing too. He dyes his graying hair. He puts on rouge. He dresses like a much younger man. This is the Apollonian man, being overtaken by something Mann, borrowing straight from Nietzsche, calls the Dionysian, chaos, instinct, desire without a leash on it. Here's where the novel gets really clever. While all this is happening internally to Aschenbach, something is happening to the city itself. There are rumors of a cholera outbreak. The authorities deny it because admitting it would ruin the tourist season. Workers quietly spread disinfectant in the streets at night. Nobody says the word out loud. Venice is beautiful on the surface and quietly rotting underneath. And that is exactly what's happening to Aschenbach. His obsession is its own kind of disease. And like the cholera, he refuses to name it, refuses to leave, refuses to protect himself from it, even when he learns the truth. He could warn the family. He could leave. He does neither. By this point, watching Tadzio has become more important to him than his own safety. That's the trade the novel is really about, what a person will risk and rationalize once they stop restraining themselves. Aschenbach never acts on his obsession in any overt way. He never speaks to Tadzio. He simply watches, weakens, and eventually, sitting in a beach chair, watching the boy wade into the water one last time, he dies. And that quietness is deliberate. Mann doesn't punish Aschenbach with some dramatic downfall. He just lets him dissolve, a man who spent his whole life building form, undone by the one thing form can't contain. There's an argument that Aschenbach doesn't really die from a virus at all. He dies because he finally let himself feel something completely, after decades of controlling everything. And it turned out his body and his life weren't built to survive that. Mann wrote this in 1912, but the core question hasn't aged at all. How much of ourselves do we build on control? And what happens to that structure the moment we actually want something we can't discipline our way out of wanting? Aschenbach isn't a villain in this book. He's a warning. A man so afraid of his own chaos that when it finally arrives, it swallows him whole. If you wanted the deep dive on the Apollonian Dionysian idea, Mann was borrowing from Nietzsche, or the way Visconti's 1971 film adaptation reinterprets this ending, let me know in the comments. That might be the next video.